This was just after I'd read Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers, where he talks about bonuses and how you don't want to drop your price, you just want to give more value to create an irresistible offer. So I thought, well, how can I do that? Well, I'll price based on deliverables, so you know exactly what you're getting, and everything else, the strategy, consulting, you'll get that included, and it's in my interest to give you that anyway, because if your site doesn't perform, then you're not going to be able to keep buying my deliverables.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How is everybody doing? My name is Joseph. Thank you for joining us on the Impactful Coaching Podcast. Just to very, very briefly introduce me, I've been in the media space for about 10 years. I've done a mixture of editing, writing, producing, researching, and, as I'm very fortunate to be doing on a day like today, hosting content, which is great for me. Got to meet a lot of great people out and about in the world, making things better in one way or another, but to also, have these personal connections and to share all of that with all of you. So with that, thank you for joining us today, and it is an honor and a privilege to be doing this. I am joined today by Stewart Vickers. Stewart, you've had quite a week, so first things first. How you doing? How you feeling today? And is it even a today? I don't know what time you're living in right now.
Yeah, I'm in Lisbon now. It's definitely been a busy week. I was actually out with Neil Patel last night. I'm sure some of your listeners will be aware of. Quite a big name in the general marketing industry now. But he started off same as me in SEO. So I was at the ASCON conference in London, run by John Penberthy. And so we all had the VIP and speakers dinner over at, Sushi Samba in London, up in the rooftop bar. So that was good fun, but definitely a subdued day today, and then had to drag myself to Lisbon for a speaking event. So I've only just arrived, but it's absolutely beautiful to be here. Managed to get an upgrade as well, so there's a hot tub in my room.
All right, right on. I've got a tub as well. It's hot if I try really hard. One thing I'm wondering is, you said speaking engagement? Were you doing the speaking?
So yesterday was audience, but this time in Lisbon, it's speaking.
So that is one of the things that I have chambered to ask. So we're going to ask that, and then what we're going to do afterwards is get a little bit into about what brought you to what you're doing today. So with speaking engagements, there's no shortage of information out there, right? It could be read, it can be listened to, it can be viewed, it can be interacted with in 3D, and in some rare cases, it can be injected directly into a person's bloodstream. So there's definitely a lot of ways to get information. So what do you feel you need to bring to the table to make a speaking engagement worth your while and make it worth the while for the audience?
I guess in terms of making it mutually beneficial, there's definitely a sense of qualification. So in my case, I think I'd really like to understand what is the exact audience. There's a lot of keynote speakers out there where they'll basically do their deck for the year and just churn out that same talk every time. Whereas the best speakers obviously understand every conference has got its own little niche. And so they might have a standard framework, but they'll always adapt that to the unique audience they're dealing with on that occasion. In terms of giving value, I'd always say mostly just actually giving actionable advice and think about who's in the room, what are they trying to achieve. So this time in Lisbon, I'm actually at an event basically about getting speaking gigs, ironically. It's all getting a bit meta. Mm-hmm. Part of my framework, I do work with a lot of coaches, and I always say, yes, you want to attract your ideal clients, but you also want to try and attract basically other opportunities for growth and visibility. So why not actually get conference producers coming to you to book you for speaking gigs? So most people get gigs by either being well established in the industry. If they're not well established in the industry, then basically they've got to go out and almost cold email, cold pitch all these conferences that they're springing up. And obviously that's quite a challenge. There's a lot of rejection. And even then there's a sense of begging. You're not necessarily able to command high fees if you do that. Whereas what I advocate is actually everything I do with Google. There are tools out there that tell you exactly what people are searching for on Google. Now that works great for clients. So if someone's looking for a public speaking coach, there's 1,000 searches a month for public speaking coach. And so you can rank for that and therefore get some of those clients who are already pre-qualified and want your service. What most people don't realize is there's all sorts of people making all sorts of different searches on Google, including conference producers. And so there's actually loads of searches out there for speakers of certain niches. And some of those niches go down a long way. Obviously, you've got the big ones like motivational speakers, leadership speakers. But just like with all SEO, there's all these opportunities and all these sub niches. So I remember a great one I found was actually Black female motivational speaker, equality and diversity speakers. The more you go down, there's people looking for speakers and experts on topics which are really quite niche, where again, there might only be a couple of hundred searches a month, but of course, they're golden opportunities for the right person. If you're a coach looking for speaking engagements, 100 a month is actually already far too many prospects you could possibly handle. So I definitely advocate ranking for some of those terms. So again, in terms of delivering value, that's quite a niche audience, speakers looking for speaking gigs. But again, I'm adapting my content to suit that.
And one follow-up in regards to niching down, just to give people a sense of expectations, is, the more niche it gets, the more I might assume that there is a smaller audience. It's one thing to be speaking in a stadium with 50,000 people, but is there a barrier or a minimum for how many people you would want to expect at a speaking engagement? 50 people who are really engaged can probably go a long way, but how would you manage expectations for people who are attempting this and are going to look down into where they can really find somewhere to get started in speaking?
Like with all actually building a website and marketing and SEO traffic, people get distracted by looking at traffic numbers in terms of quality, got the wrong way around, quantity rather than quality. So don't think about how many users can I get? Think of what's my revenue per user. One of my most profitable websites I've ever ran is actually in the marketing software niche. And you can go into these keyword tools and you can see it's really not getting that much traffic. It's less than 500 visitors a month. In reality, a lot of the keywords don't exist in those keyword tools. And the real data is actually much bigger. But even then, it's not a high traffic site by any means. But what I'm actually ranking for are these sort of commercial terms, product reviews, comparisons, for basically high ticket marketing software. So back in, it's about 2 years ago now, actually, when the first batches of AI copywriting software came out, like Jasper, which wasn't called Jasper at the time, Clothes Copy, I just made sure me and my team were going out and reviewing every single one of those tools, which therefore meant we were able to, it was called launch jacking, where you get ahead of the competition and you rank number one really easily for those kinds of new products. So it's the same thing with speaking gigs. I would much rather be in the room with 20 to 30 high ticket, highly engaged, highly qualified coaches who are actually going to implement, who understand the value of SEO traffic. That's this basically a long-term investment to build what I call an evergreen empire, where it's basically like online real estate. You put all your content out there, and for years and years, you can attract all these really good quality inbound leads, as opposed to someone. I've been to conferences. I was in Dubai a couple of months ago, and there was a conference of 3,000 people. I wasn't speaking there, but they were pretty much all about paid ads and a lot of what's called traffic arbitrage, where you basically buy ads on one platform and then sell it to another platform. And you don't really understand how that actually makes money, but somehow it's a really big business. But it meant that a lot of people there were basically employees of these brands, all fighting for this traffic on payday loans, gambling, things like that. It didn't really feel like there were any true product owners. Whereas some of the best events I've ever been to have been small, intimate masterminds of around 30 people, already pre-qualified. Basically, they've worked with a certain coach who's actually hosting the event, something like that. And also everyone contributes. So you get this sense of a specialist in each different niche. So those are really good quality events. I also like it. You can actually do fun stuff. So my friend Ron Reich runs a mastermind where we all go whitewater rafting in Colombia and in the rainforest, and stayed overnight and then got helicopters back. So that was after 2 days of the more proper business conference. So yeah, in terms of speaking gigs, there's this full package basically where, yes, ideally you do want to speak, it's very effective, but also it's just the opportunity to actually have deep, meaningful conversations with like-minded people, and preferably do some fun stuff as well.
It's not just fun for the sake of fun, too. Part of that bonding really creates a memorable experience. I would imagine that increases the likelihood of then wanting to continue on doing business afterwards, because you just have that positive association with one another.
Definitely. When you're riding the rapids in Colombia and you've got waves crashing into your face, basically, then yeah, that shows me what person's really like. So do I want to work with that person? put them in a situation like that.
Next time that there's a conference hosted at boot camp, and I mean an actual military boot camp, we'll see the correlation between going through all of that, all the mud and the trenches, and how that translates. So that's something to think about. Yeah. All right. So here's what we're going to do is what we're appealing to a lot of the people in the coaching space, and we want to bring the absolute best value to them. And the first thing that I'd like to do before we hear about your backstory is, I think, let's understand, what are the services that you're providing to them, and we'll get into some case studies if we have time for that too. What are some great examples of that? But what is it that you're bringing to the table, and helping? What problems are you working to solve?
Yeah, so my framework is called the power lever method, which is basically a more developed form of SEO, search engine optimization, which most people see as almost like this magic fairy dust that you apply. I have a website. Can you SEO it for me? And the answer is generally, well, yes and no. SEO is much more better explained, but people are making these Google searches all the time. Are you actually aligning your content and your website with what they're searching for? It really is as simple as that. So the way the power lever method works is we make sure you're actually getting the targeting right. So these coaches, they tend to have focused on really quite beautiful brand messaging, where they're talking about how I bring about transformation and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, I then go to them and say, I'm sorry, but you're a public speaking coach, you're a mindset coach. And if you're not saying in your content that I am a mindset coach, Google, which let's face it, is just a dumb machine, is not going to rank you for mindset coach. So I say that, I oversimplify. Google is highly sophisticated, highly advanced. But what you got to remember is everything it does has to be done at massive scale, very quickly as well. If you think how quickly you get a result back across millions of websites. So you've got to remember, you are just dealing with a machine, an algorithm. So you've got to be very deliberate with how it works. So exactly that, you need to exactly match the search intent of that user. So if they say mindset coach, the machine wants to give it mindset coach. And just having that targeting can give you a lot of extra credibility there.
I'm going to float an analogy out there just to see if it sticks, but I remember briefly spending some time at a ranch as part of a school trip, and they said that, okay, horses, they're very strong, they're very capable, they're very efficient at what they do, but they're stupid. So you have to understand how to utilize their strengths while please be understanding that, they're horses, they're not human beings. So maybe in that sense, a search engine could be viewed like a horse, where you do need to know how to use its strengths, but you also have to use your strengths to kind of coincide with it.
Yeah, I definitely say that's accurate. So normally when I start with a client, basically they'll be getting some traffic, but basically by accident, they've written this blog post 2 years ago that they thought was relevant and interesting, but it could be some sort of small lifestyle thing, like they went for a walk in a certain city and now they're ranking for walks in that city, which if they're selling mindset is not going to get them any customers. Whereas in reality, Google's got this massive 95% market share of the search engine market. So there's a huge amount of traffic there all the time that you can just tap into if you get the targeting right. And the amazing thing about the coaching niche was it really isn't that competitive. For some reason, I started going to these masterminds and meeting some of these coaches, and they're relying on basically posting on organic social media as a real content treadmill, trying to craft the perfect LinkedIn, perfect Facebook post, and otherwise just relying on referrals. It's really good community and quite tightly knit, and therefore you can get these good referral pathways. Mm-hmm. Now, those are great when you're just starting out, but when you're ready to scale, neither of those strategies are really that scalable. All these coaches keep telling me about the absolute grind of getting out their social media posts every day. Whatever it is you offer, there are hundreds of people every month searching for your niche. Most of the time, I'd be willing to bet that. There have been times I was at an event in Miami, and I met someone who said she was an intuitive coach. And I thought, oh, this might be a bit niche. Is this going to be the flaw in my philosophy? But I went into my keyword tool, and actually intuitive life coach gets 250 searches a month. Now, the amazing thing is these keyword tools tend to actually underestimate the real traffic volumes that are out there. So it's purely indicative. The 250 is actually much greater than that. One of my clients works in, I don't want to give too much away, but he basically works in the US education sector. And again, I thought, that was quite niche in terms of the specific profession he was targeting. But again, we dug down, had a look, recommended a few articles that his competitors had covered, therefore he should cover them as well. And he smashed it. He was ranking those pages in absolutely no time. At one point, we even found the keyword where people in this profession were looking for templates and strategies to basically improve themselves within that profession when they just got the job. So those people making those searches were perfect candidates for his training. So he wrote the blog post on basically templates for what they should first implement when they first get the job. That ranked probably bottom of page one pretty quickly. And the way Google works takes time to get some traction, but over time it moved higher and higher up. So now he's at position 3 in Google. Again, my keyword tool says he's getting maybe 200 visits a month. Go into his actual analytics, he's getting 500 searches a month. Now he then rolled with that and basically wrote a book basically explaining how these people getting the new profession, how they can get going and craft their perfect entry plan.
That's not a niche that I would have factored in. It's not just about the position somebody holds, but the duration, how long a person has held that position, starting out at that middle point, getting into the more experienced status. Maybe at one point they might be looking for a pivot of their own. So that's something that I hadn't even factored in myself. But with that, I definitely want to. I'm really fascinated by what I've learned so far about you, being able to do take some time to do some research. But I'm really dying to know. Like, here's what I do know. You started by studying the history of art, and then you transitioned into journalism. And then while you were working in journalism, you were at that time finding the importance of SEO to help improve the business that you're working at the time. So that's my Cliff Notes version of it. But please tell us how things got to where they are today.
Yeah, people always assume I work in technology or computers, or rather studied technology or computers. No, absolutely not. I was purely humanities based. So now I always wanted to be a writer. That's or a painter, preferably both. So I saw myself as this kind of sort of Oscar Wilde type figure, late 19th century, dressed in velvet, just dabbling in a bit of that and a bit of that in the creative arts, basically. But I knew that wasn't really a very sustainable career option. So I went for history of art, because it was this respectable academic degree. People joke about it being basically the degree for people who don't know what they want to do, which I wouldn't say is strictly wrong. But even in my A-levels, that was extremely, again, humanities based. I did ancient history, classics, English literature, and art. So history of art was quite a natural progression, but I quite quickly found that humanities have very low contact hours at UK universities. So I had maybe 2 lectures a week, something like that, which was just taking a couple of hours. And I moved to London, having an absolutely brilliant time, love living in London. But the challenge with that is obviously London's very expensive. And I felt like I was time rich, but cash poor. So I thought, how can we flip this around a bit? And so I started looking for part-time work. I was back in my hometown in Reading, and there were people out up with clipboards in the street saying, do you know anyone who's looking for work? And I said, well, as it happens, I'd be interested. And it was some really dodgy double glazing selling company where you go door to door on a commission basis. So I had the interview and all sorts, where even though I was about 19 at the time, I sensed I was still the oldest person in the room for the sales job. And of course, they gave me the job, but I spoke to a few friends, and someone said they'd reported this company, and Trading Standards, our regulatory body, had a massive file on them. So it was all really dodgy. So I was very pleased when I applied for a job as a menswear writer for a men's accessories brand. They did handkerchiefs and ties, basically. And they said, we want an expert on menswear to just write about certain topics, whether it's coats, ties, shirts. And basically, you can write it as flamboyantly, humanly as you like, but we want you to use these keywords throughout the content. So if we're writing something about gentlemen's overcoats, then you want to say gentlemen's overcoats throughout the content. And this is how we rank on Google. And that's when it occurred to me that, having always wanted to be a writer and not really thought it's a proper career, proper profession, actually there's this whole field of marketing that depends on writing. At least it did until ChatGPT. That was a real game changer for me, where I realized I could be a creative writer, writing about what I was passionate about, as long as I use keywords, and then people make money out of it. So with that experience, it was still a very small gig job. So with that experience, I got more of a full-time role at a online magazine startup. I left SEO behind at that point. It wasn't to do with Google. It's all about social media. This was definitely in the sort of BuzzFeed 2015 era, where we were just trying to blast out content onto Facebook and try to make it go viral. Like all news organizations, they really struggled to sustain that. Social traffic is great. I'm sure most of your listeners will know that you put a post out, you get 48 hours of great engagement, and then it's done. So you've written this long, beautiful article, had it edited. We had proper journalists, ex-Iraq war journalists, working with us as the sort of editor and trainer, who would teach us, the bloggers, to be proper journalists, basically. So a lot of work into every article, and very little long-term payoff. But they pivoted into what's called affiliate marketing, where you basically promote products in return for a commission. So they were trying to do top 10 leather jackets, top 10 trainers, I don't know. And I thought, for them trying to do this broad approach, broad fashion, that seems quite competitive. Is it really going to stick? Whereas, like the menswear, I've got a passion for certain niche communities, which London is great for. So I'm really into vintage, goth, metal, which kind of adds up.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I can take that affiliate marketing model and apply it to my interests. So that was basically a project during my final year of university. In fact, didn't pay much attention during final year of university. That was all about this, making this website work. I did the classic error of thinking, this is going to be big. This is my startup. I'm going to raise capital and that sort of thing. Basically, after graduating, I had about 6 months before in the basement. So there's barely any daylight. Whereas in the UK, we have a shop called Waitrose, which at the time, I don't think it's come back since the pandemic. You used to be able to get a free coffee if you bought something, and you could buy whatever you wanted. I would go in and buy the cheapest 40p packet of biscuits just so I could sit with a coffee for a couple of hours. But there was one day I did that, went home, and the flat had been burgled. And then that's when I thought, this is it. It's time to get a real job. I made 12 cents on banner ads that day. But in the meantime, obviously, websites, once content costs money, but once you have a website, it doesn't really cost you anything to keep it running. So it kept on going in the background. And actually, I noticed that some of my articles were continuing to get traction and traffic over time. I'd had great success with social in the short term. So one post I wrote truly went viral within that community. It got 10,000 visits within about 48 hours, which, to be honest, I just found scary because I felt like this weight upon my shoulders that I had to capitalize on this opportunity. Mm-hmm. Also, a sense of liability, and that to go viral, obviously, you need to be a bit punchy, a bit controversial. So I thought, what if you start getting this negative feedback and that sort of thing? Whereas the article I was really ranking was I heard about the game Fortnite, and the costume company Spirit Halloween had brought out the official Fortnite Halloween costumes. So I saw this was trending, wrote an article. Here's your Fortnite cosplay costumes. And that article really took off. I think it was getting something like 100 visitors per day. Now, the amazing thing was people who are Googling for Fortnite costumes and land on a page about Fortnite costumes go on and buy the Fortnite costumes. Mm-hmm. But that was the incredible moment that I saw SEO. Not only is it this wonderful passive enterprise where you've built this asset and then over time it continues to attract the right traffic. Also, you're kind of in the backdrop. It's not like you're having to be constantly going out and grinding out this content. You still have to grind out the content, but you're in the shadows. You don't have to be this sort of public face going out, invading people on social media. Instead, you get some gentle trickle of users that all come to you who already want to hear from you. They want what you're writing about, and then they'll go and buy it. You've got this true conversion, commercially orientated traffic that works. So that one article made far more than the article that got 10,000 visitors just on banner ads. So simple as that. But of course, it still wasn't enough. It takes time to upskill, but also get traction with these projects anyway. Even if you have the skills, it takes time to grow. So I joined a small insurance startup, and they're basically just running paid ads to try and sell insurance products in the UK. And I was obviously still learning at that point, but we were spending 10 grand a month basically on ads and really getting very few sales. It was quite scary. Mm-hmm. And this was a proper company that'd done a big raise and worked with all these agencies, and so far nothing had delivered. And I was there a good while, but I kept on pitching about this SEO with my experience, but they just couldn't understand how writing blogs turns into actually selling insurance products, and who can blame them? In the meantime, I actually started another website that was purely SEO focused. So I took that concept with the Fortnite costumes and applied it to the whole website. So I've sold it now, so I can talk about it. But it was about traditional shaving. People laugh because this was the same time I grew a beard, mm-hmm. but it was a commercial venture. In the past, I was passionate about men's grooming and shaving, so I felt justified. And originally, I was actually looking at how to launch basically an e-commerce brand. There's a business model called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, where you basically design a product, import it, get it manufactured in China, and then sell it on Amazon. But obviously that requires quite big costs in terms of inventory and getting that product developed. So I thought, let's just start off, my skills in traffic. So let's just see if we can get traffic, find the popular products that we can actually sell, and then we'll just swap out that product for our own product once we've got that data. In reality, I never developed my own products because I ended up, there was only 100 pages on this website, but they were all doing extremely well in Google because I covered the topic so comprehensively, written in-depth articles and reviews of all these different products, like best shaving brush, best shaving soap, different types of safety razor. So that website was doing a very healthy income. At one point, it was actually matching my day job income. So I was pitching this as a case study to the day job, saying this stuff is really working. And the incredible thing that most of us talk about now in SEO is if you can sell a cheap product, it takes the same time, energy, and resources to sell a cheap product as a high ticket product. Here I was making $1 for each shaving brush or safety razor I sold. But I knew this would work for the insurance company. So they said, eventually, we'll test it out. I wrote a couple of blog posts and the phone started ringing within 2 weeks. So that was an absolute game changer. And again, it was just by finding those niche underserved topics and targeting those. But it was still commercially relevant. So that was an absolute game changer for the insurance company. Then with that experience, I then got headhunted to a much bigger insurance company. And this was a proper commercial job. And it was much more to do with website management. So they knew I had all this experience around SEO and getting traffic from Google. But it's still very much a case of they had the growth executives, the growth team, and they'd basically brief in what they wanted us on the website team to implement. So it was basically managing web pages, building web pages, images, titles, that sort of thing. And it didn't really have the strategic edge so much. They did give me a little side project to do a bit of SEO, and that did really well. But all these chains of command basically just meant I wasn't really able to move from my position as this website manager. In the meantime, we had these big proper London SEO agencies working for us, charging a huge amount of money. And basically I was that annoying client who was asking all the difficult questions. And yeah, I don't want to throw stones, but it's pretty clear that they were not delivering the best quality work that they could be whilst charging a very high price. And existentially, it just really burned into my soul that I could be doing so much better than this if you just let me. And eventually I couldn't take it anymore. So that's when I quit. The universe was telling me you should form an SEO agency and actually give people the results they deserve.
I don't think SEO has as much of this issue as some of the other trades out there or some of the other professions out there where it's not crystal clear how to quantify the return on investment. Whereas because SEO is highly data driven, there's at least some hard facts and hard data to look at to indicate, well, here's the traffic, here's the movement. So the fact that a lot of these places weren't delivering it, they didn't have the same, I think, gray area that like an advertising agency would have, where you just put the ads out and says, well, it's on the billboard, right? It's on the magazine. Maybe they look at it, maybe they don't.
That's exactly it. So the whole industry is. I don't want to throw stones and say the whole industry is shady, but it's definitely an industry where there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Well, shadiness, I would say, emerges from a good industry. An industry does have to be strong and performing in order for. I'm going to ask you, Stewart, one more question about these agencies, and this does come from a place of curiosity, and we're trying to keep the stones firmly on the floor, but could you specify or highlight what you found were some of the issues or frankly failings that these agencies that were causing these agencies to not deliver on the results that they should have given the money they were charging people?
Yeah, definitely. It was certainly with these big London agencies, there's a sense that they have the brand, they've got the beautiful office, that sort of thing. They'll come in and schmooze your decision makers basically, and then after that, there's kind of this blind faith that. Obviously, we've gone with it's the same. The coaching industry is often the same, where there's that sense of value-based pricing, and that if you pay a lot of money for it, therefore it must be good. If I buy the most expensive wine on the menu, obviously it's going to be great. Often it's not always like that. So that's definitely how these agencies operate. The more of a brand they can get, the better. There's all these awards out there where the awards go to the insiders. There's lots of money exchange, things like that. So it's quite. I say it's easy to build a reputation like that, but then you say, why aren't I doing that? No, if you're prepared to throw money at the wall and focus on the public facing, the PR side rather than actually doing the work. Remember that SEO is changing all the time. And that's really what the shocking thing with these agencies were, in that they were using tactics that were really old and outdated. They were basically still using the old, basically write a blog post of 500 words and use a keyword 4 times. Whereas what I always tell my clients is that now you actually have these tools which will take your specific keyword and look at all your competitors who are actually ranking and give you a recipe based on what's working for them. What is Google rewarding? And it's different for every single search term. Sometimes it needs to be a 3,000 word blog post. Sometimes it's only 1,000 words. So all these old practices of it should be 500 to 1,000 words using one keyword a couple of times, and it's just not accurate. And for a big insurance company, you're in a competitive niche. So you need to go above and beyond to do the cutting edge, because other people out there are doing it, not necessarily other companies that are just using agencies, but there's some very smart people out there, more sort of SEO freelancers, basically. More sort of ethically, I think the biggest thing for me was basically the idea that because of this brand, they can charge this big retainer. And the retainer often doesn't really come with any actual set deliverables. So they'll basically tie you into a contract, often a year or even more. I think in our case, they actually negotiated a 6-month break clause where they could decide whether they wanted to carry on or not. But regardless, there's 6 months where they were tied into that contract. And there weren't actually any specific deliverables, as far as I was aware, really tied to that contract. And because of that, you just get this sort of mix of results. For them, the big thing was just the monthly call where they get the key stakeholders from the company and all the account managers. And of course, the account managers would smile, say everything's going great. We'll take you through this report. And it's just a really long and tedious call where there's not really actually much to show for it. So they'll pad it out with smoke and mirrors, basically. So when I started my agency, I went with the productized service approach, where basically you're not paying for my strategy, you're paying for set deliverables. And as part of that, I decided to just throw in the strategy for free. This was just after I'd read Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers, where he talks about bonuses and how you don't want to drop your price, you just want to give more value to create an irresistible offer. So I thought, how can I do that? Well, I'll price based on deliverables, so you know exactly what you're getting, and everything else, the strategy, consulting, you'll get that included. And it's in my interest to give you that anyway, because if your site doesn't perform, then you're not going to be able to keep buying my deliverables. So that was basically how it started. But even then, as I got deeper and deeper into the SEO industry and started networking more, I knew that the industry certainly had bad players. I didn't realize how dark it could go. Mm-hmm. Again, won't name any names, but there are literally agencies out there. One of the biggest things is actually link building, which is one of the main deliverables we offer. So Google rates you in 2 ways. One is the quality and relevance of your content, but the other, once Google's got all these pages all talking about the same stuff, how does it decide what goes at the top? And it's all about looking at links from other websites as votes of confidence in your website and you as a brand. So the more links you've got, the better. And because of that, one of the biggest struggles with SEO is doing that kind of PR work to get links back into your site. The common way of doing that we do is through outreach and basically negotiating with webmasters. But what you'll find with these agencies is that's a really tedious job. So you basically end up with layers and layers of resellers where one person is basically white labeling another. It's very difficult to tell who is actually responsible for placing this link in the first place, even to the extent that some agencies were actually, probably still are, they're selling hacked links. There are these resellers on the internet, sites like Fiverr, where they'll just happily hack a site, not necessarily tell you that. And that link is quite cheap because obviously it's not a big job to actually hack a site. But then to the end user, they're paying quite a hefty premium for what then turns out to actually just be a cheap hack link. So all different levels of shadiness there, where agencies are just not being transparent with what they're doing. Certainly in our case, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of if I question them about, where are these links coming from? I'm not a big fan of this one. What's the methodology here, basically? You basically get loads of excuses. Like, I remember someone saying, so in the industry, there's the big split is basically between link insertions and guest posting. Guest posting is the classic, but quite often, if you just want to get a link inserted on a web page quickly and efficiently, then most webmasters will happily just insert that link for you. Both of them are valid, both work. This agency was telling us that they were doing, when I asked what methods they were using for their link building, they said we do a content exchange. I'm saying that sounds like guest posting. It sounds a bit more authoritative, but I can see you clearly just inserted a link on this page that's kind of relevant to the subject. I'm not seeing how that's a content exchange, as you call it. So yeah, focus on the deliverables, make sure the deliverables are good quality. That's pretty much it, and actually doing the work ourselves rather than outsourcing it.
Just one thing, and this is a very pragmatic point, just based on my observation, but by being deliverables based, that does maybe fluctuate how much time you might actually need to provide those deliverables. So the incentive for you is to be efficient with your time and do it not quickly to the point where you overlook something important, but so that way a client isn't handed. What I mean? Like if a problem comes up, it's on your end to solve, right? A client isn't going to be hit with this bill where all of a sudden it took like an additional 12 to 20 hours. And it's like, what happened? It's like, well, here's the thing. And so just to try to avoid frameworks or SOPs, just to make sure that, you're able to kind of be efficient with your time on these deliverables.
Exactly. So the back end, the beauty of a product as a service is not only does the client know what they're getting, but you know what you're giving. And that is really quite nice and scalable. So it is just an SOP that you can roll out and scale. The limit of that is the consulting, and that's much more on me. So like I say, this is just a bonus that I add in. But in reality, if a client's not getting results, then I'm going to step in because otherwise they're not going to hang around much longer. It's very dangerous when I say we do this free strategy, free consulting, whatever. 90% of the time, I always say the vast majority of SEO is just great content and great links and a bit of website optimization that doesn't take very long. So that's very process driven. But there's always this danger of, what if there's something extra? And as you say, that becomes this time suck, basically. The only time that's really happened, I think, is basically one of my clients had previously worked with a web developer. And again, agencies being dodgy. They basically had it written into their contract that he was not allowed to use any other services while he was with them. And they were a full package for hosting, web design, and marketing, including SEO. So for him simply to take up my SEO services, then he was in breach of that contract. So he was quite happy to move from them. But that then meant he got this custom website built with them, and he had to migrate the whole website to a different hosting provider. And when you take a really custom build like that and put it on standard hosting, things start to go wrong. Mm-hmm. Of course, he wasn't tech savvy to understand what was going on. Why should he? He was focused on delivering results for his clients. I'm not an expert on web hosting, but I know more than he does. So that was a time I really stepped in and had to basically handle the whole migration myself. I probably wouldn't do that again, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But in that case, he was a good client. There was definitely, I saw a big path for scaling and growing together. So I was prepared to, it was a good few days actually to do that migration. So on that time, I was prepared to do it. Just like running a coaching business, I think there's always a good call for boundaries, and that you want to over-deliver for your clients as much as you can. Also, you need to have the chance to step back, and sometimes things are outside your remit.
I'm relating to something on a vastly different scale here, but there was one project that I had to work on where it was a lot of video techniques that I hadn't normally done, and I did my best, but the hours in that went way past what I expected. So I can either continue to barter with them and try to get more hours on the clock, or I realize, what, this is school. This is a lesson. This is me teaching myself something that's going to save me time way down the line. So I think part of it is also just making peace with these, knowing that in the long term, this will pay off, even if in the short term, this is a lot of time that I wasn't expecting to spend on it.
That's a big one, actually. That's one of the reasons I offer the free consulting, and that I've run these online businesses for years where, like I say, working in the basement flat or going to Waitrose for the free coffee, things would blow up all the time. I'd have to work out how to fix them. So now I get a client who's got a big business and that same thing is blowing up for them, and I know how to fix it. And if I fix it again for them, then they're getting the same, I'm extending the benefit of that investment that I originally made. Mm-hmm. So recently I had a new client come on board, and she'd been referred to me, but all her emails were going into my junk mail. So you need, these are also with your hosting and DNS records. You basically have these almost like signatures to basically authorize, yes, that's my domain. Yes, it's my emails coming from there. If you don't have those records set up correctly, then it causes all sorts of problems like that. And there's checkers on the internet where you can make sure you've got those. So I just put in her domain, and obviously they weren't there. So I replied to her saying, yes, I'd love to have a call with you about sorting out your SEO. Also, just FYI, you might want to sort this. Here's how you fix it. And her response was immediate. Thank you so much. My team has been trying for a year to fix this, and they couldn't. Let's get on a call right now. That's where I feel like these agencies can improve, where often there are quite simple things. I wasn't necessarily offering to go in and fix that problem for her, but I was aware of what the problem was and how to fix it. And often that's the biggest thing, just working out what the problem is and having someone with that awareness.
And with that, let's move into talking, specifically about the coaching niche here. So, considering that some of this question might have been pre-answered as we've unfolded this conversation, what I like to ask to sort of simplify it is, what interests you about working in the coaching niche, and how much of it was a personal or an emotional attachment, how much of it was just it gelled really well with the way you think and the way you operate.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, coaches are great people. Most of them genuinely do want to help people out and make a positive impact on the world. And because
I'd say that tracks.
Yeah. But because of that, they make great clients as well. Like I say, I started off with just this link building agency, and I thought I'm going to take my insurance background and I'll just get other insurance companies. But I was thinking there's going to be all these layers of bureaucracy in the way, where it's going to be all these meetings, calls, sign-offs. Would I actually be able to do anything within those companies without several layers of approval? So it's quite clear that my best clients for me were basically single solo entrepreneur businesses, where maybe they've got a small team, a few contractors, but fundamentally it's one entrepreneur making the decisions. The other reason was what I was saying earlier about it takes the same skills, resources, and energy to sell a cheap product as an expensive product. So I've always been fascinated by this idea of how can I max that out? What is the ultimate high ticket product that I can sell through SEO? So going from shaving brushes to insurance products was a big step, but where do I go from there? And have fun with it. The sky's the limit with that. And coaching programs, most of these high ticket coaches, the standard is probably around $10,000. Some even more than that. Going back to the idea of speaking gigs, yes, you could be paid 10 grand for that speaking gig. But if you then get clients from the people in the room, a single speaking gig could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. Then leads on to more speaking gigs. So for me, coaching and just the sort of information economy was really fascinating. This idea of informational products are, first of all, pure margin. There's no, obviously group coaching and one-to-one coaching is a bit limited, but in terms of info products, if you've got a course, and even then group coaching is still quite scalable, there's very little ongoing cost. So you've got a very high profit margin, but also because of what you're selling is kind of intangible. If you've got an entrepreneur in front of you and you improve their mindset by 10%, so they scale from 1 million to 2 million, obviously they're going to be prepared to pay a huge amount of money for that kind of gain. So the value of those leads and the value of those products is kind of intangible, but also massively scalable. So I think that's what really did it for me. And that was paired with just a real split in terms of these coaches had these really high ticket products and were clearly delivering great results, but the marketing was very limited. They were, I say, just focusing on posting on Facebook and Instagram and waiting for the odd referral. Meanwhile, I'm saying to these people, there's literally hundreds of people per month searching for exactly what you're offering. Why aren't you showing up for them? So it's just joining the dots, perfect hungry clients, perfect product that they want to buy. Really not that difficult to actually bring those together. It's not a competitive niche. Most top SEOs work in things like gambling, finance, but coaching products, like I say, extremely high value, but not a competitive market. I suspect a lot of the competition, obviously SEO tends to be highly technical, and I suspect there's a bit of bias there in that they don't see coaching as being this sort of hard, tangible product that they understand, and it's all a bit woo, basically. Mm-hmm. I think because of that, the coaching niche is really not that competitive. There's a lot of scope to totally dominate your niche if you have a coaching brand.
There's two things before I move into my next scripted question, and one of them is just because we've mentioned it, the difference between working for high ticket sales versus low ticket sales. There's one stipulation there that I think some people are probably considering. It's crossed my mind, but Wouldn't it even out because you are selling a low ticket item to a high volume of people versus selling a high ticket item to a few people? I think that's the logic where that's how it would scale. So did it end up being that the low ticket products weren't reaching the amount of people that it needed to reach?
That's what I thought about in the early days, that I just assumed, I think those of us make this mistake, that you think cheaper products are probably going to be less competitive. And it just doesn't seem to be that way. I don't really understand why that is. A lot of big newspapers have now moved into affiliate marketing. And yeah, you've got really quite major brands who are targeting really small, I don't know, just low ticket everyday products, and you're not going to outrank those brands. Whereas in my case, certainly in the early days, finding a niche insurance product that the likes of Aviva and all these huge insurance companies in the UK just overlooked. They've got their own internal limits on resources, so they're not going to bother with the smaller items. I love that quote from War Dogs where Jonah Hill just talks about his contracts for government defense spending, how they all go online and all the big contractors all swoop in on the big deals for the tanks, the aircraft, but no one bothers about the small orders for just a few handguns here and there. So he says, in terms of a slice of the pie, he's just going after the crumbs. But to him, that's obviously huge. Basically, things like the links, the content, they cost the same amount of money to do. So you might as well sell a product that's worth thousands rather than sell cheap products, because fundamentally it's all just time. And time basically decides the value of everything, including how much a webmaster has to be incentivized to insert a link for you.
It's one of those questions where I just feel like, if people are listening might be thinking along those lines too. So definitely wanted to get that out into the ether. But the other one that came up, I hear coaches and I have this Venn diagram in my head of coaches and consultants, because I think consultancy runs into a lot of the same, woo-woo objections where, like, okay, how much of it is actually tangible and measurable? So is consultancy a neighbor to you? Is it a cousin to coaching? Have you noticed any cross-pollination there? And then on the flip side, what would be like the main, I guess, differentiating factor between these two?
Yeah, I think they're much the same. I think most people prefer to be known as a coach because that sounds kind of energetic and proactive, more sort of Tony Robbins, whereas a consultant, in this country, we've got KPMG, Deloitte, these big consulting firms where someone in a suit and short back and sides who basically comes in, tells you what to do and charges you a lot of money. So yeah, I think it's kind of a negative association with consultant. And
Interesting.
I think just semantically, coach sounds better. It's short and punchy. Consultant. For my book, The Power Lever Method, I did think about calling it How Coaches and Consultants Can Achieve X, but it was just too wordy. Whereas, I think if you deal with transmitting information, then you're a coach.
Okay. I guess I'll add something onto that anyways, just because it had crossed my mind as well. But I remember, growing up and, being part of certain sports teams, having coaches, right? And so there's that span of experience between having a full grown adult, working with us, teaching us how to play soccer, although in my case, poorly, but I tried. So I think that there is a more of also a resonance with that it comes, a lot of people are familiar with that from a very young age, which means that word probably imprinted at a younger age as well. So I think there's definitely a point to be made about that.
Coach is definitely sporty, I think, in essence, which
So with that, now this next one, I don't know why I'm inside baseballing. Oh, this is a scripted question or not. I don't know. I'm just having fun with that. But what have you found to be the average career status that coaches are at before they become coaches? Like a certain amount of credentials or experience or just time in the industry before someone feels like it's time to impart their knowledge to others?
Yeah, definitely. I know there's that. There's always a stereotype around 25-year-olds becoming life coaches. More cynically, but no, pretty much all my clients, certainly the high ticket clients I know, they've got deep sort of industry expertise. I think there is also another slightly negative connotation where it's someone who's kind of bored of their day job and they've sort of graduated beyond it. And again, certainly in this country, we talk about how once you're over 50 or so, you then become a consultant. But so there's definite benefits in some deep domain expertise, like I say. So that's why definitely works well in the niches. Like I say, my clients in the education sector, and also business coaches who have worked with just a wide array of businesses. There's that experience that comes with repeating the same processes for multiple clients. I've definitely got the same thing working as an agency. If I've got 30 websites in front of me and I can see how they're all performing in Google, then I can get a lot of data very quickly. So definitely with business coaches, I know they have their framework, they apply it to every client, and they're able to offer these guarantees. They know that with the right client, with the right implementation, that they're going to get the same results as everyone else.
Unless we're about to give away too many, trade secrets, but with being able to accumulate that kind of data, and you obviously have the opportunity to observe a lot of patterns. Do any patterns stick out to you that, like, similar issues that you notice a lot of coaches are having, being able to solve a problem for one person and ends up solving a problem for the next 10?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, step one, like I say, is that point about just the basic website audit. Have they got content on their website? Are they talking about relevant topics, or are they just talking about what nice day it is? Also, just some technical fixes. So don't use out-of-the-box website builders like Wix, Squarespace. They're very beautiful, very user-friendly, but they're slow, they're clunky. And if you actually want to customize anything, it's quite limiting. So just go with WordPress. That's wordpress.org, the open source one. So you don't need to pay for it. You just need to install it on some hosting. And you've got a free website, and that's infinitely customizable. There's a whole universe of third-party plugins you can use. Plus, people like me, other developers, they all understand it. It's the same framework. And then there's certain plugins that we just use over and over again to fix things like speed or internal linking between articles. That's a service we offer. So we do that in bulk. That's another benefit of having volume, and that obviously I've got volume agency pricing on a lot of tools and software. Whereas for one coach to accumulate all the different tools and plugins they need is obviously getting very expensive. Other than that, just definitely tactical things. Obviously, everyone's always debating about what's working in the industry right now, but ultimately, nothing works better than the first-hand experience of observing with your clients. So the big one at the moment is, does AI content actually rank? I can tell you absolutely. In fact, on one of my sites, I used ChatGPT to write a review. This is a bit meta. I reviewed a AI content writing software that I hadn't used, hadn't touched it. And I'm now number one for the review of that software product. A pretty much purely ChatGPT blog post. So you've got to be smart about it. Again, make sure you're fulfilling all those criteria. Don't just take what ChatGPT gives you and paste it into WordPress. But yeah, things like that. There's a lot of, again, going back to the smoke and mirrors of agencies. Agencies will tell you, same thing for all these gurus and experts. They'll tell you what they want you to know. And I've definitely seen big speakers say things that completely counteracts what I can see happening. And we all have our own reasons for having that kind of front end viewpoint. Another big one is building links, and that you shouldn't build links, you should earn them slowly over time. My view is always that you've got to get traffic somehow, and you can either wait 5 years or build the links and get the traffic now. And again, multiple clients, my own websites as well. Because of all the hype, because of all the concerns that the gurus are saying, don't build links, I therefore didn't for a long time. As soon as I started building links, my traffic went through the roof. So it's really quite simple. And again, gurus, they benefit from maintaining the mystique that they have the secret. No one else has the secret, and therefore you've got to listen to them. Whereas in reality, if you just implement some of the fundamentals yourself, then you realize a lot of it's not that hard.
One observation that I made in my long career of listening to people, and I have to watch out for myself too when I do this, is, speaking is, and trying to teach others is unconsciously an effort to reinforce our own ideas, right? So if I'm speaking in front of thousands of people, it's a matter of, I want these 1,000 people to believe what I believe because I want to believe what I believe even stronger and more resolute than I had prior to. I'm not saying people are doing it consciously or even out of malice, but I think that is something that we as humans do need to watch out for.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really heard that before. Yeah, it's definitely an idea of what you say makes it true.
Mm-hmm. We're closing in on the final part of this episode. So there is one other thing that I was interested in asking about in regards to the coaches, and then I have some fun stuff prepared for you too. So I feel like the answer to this question is going to be it depends, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. What do you find to be the medium balance for coaches? Like, how much is a successful coach focused on the technical advice versus the more motivational or even like the more emotional side to improve someone's mindset?
Interesting. There's this joke actually. You say it depends. And they do say if you ask an SEO anything, the answer is always it depends.
I actually came up with this earlier today. I don't know if it's too tasteless, but I almost want to call it a diaper question because the answer is it depends. We'll see how that tracks.
But to get back to the question, the point is in terms of the delivery of the coach, how much is sort of technical based on framework? Yeah, I think certainly the really successful coaches, they always pull it back to some core fundamentals. So yeah, I've got clients in leadership, and again, they're just bringing out some really quite classic literature, classic frameworks, stuff that if you've worked in leadership, if you've read these books before, you'll be quite familiar with. But again, it's one of those things where to gain that knowledge, you've actually had to spend years trawling through all that discourse. Whereas if a coach can simply present it to you in an easy, accessible format, then that makes total sense. I think in terms of the more woo aspect, the positive reinforcement, no, I think it's definitely some core fundamentals there. Of course, the big one is accountability. If you're paying a lot of money to a coach and they're going to check in with you every week, then you're going to get a lot more done. It's as simple as that rather than trying to do everything by yourself. I'm definitely guilty of this, thinking I don't need someone to teach me this, but then you find you're still saying yes to everything. It's much easier when you've got someone you've invested in it and then someone's holding you to account for that.
And I think that stems back from a lot of how a lot of us are raised in civilized society. We go through school, we're accountable to our parents, we're accountable to our peers, accountable to teachers. And so I struggle with this too, is that when I'm only accountable to myself, I tend to let myself off pretty easily. So having other people there to help facilitate that growth is pretty important.
The amazing thing about the masterminds actually, and group coaching is it's a fantastic business model because the product of the mastermind actually increases the value of the product. If you're on a group call and you've got this bunch of people who are all holding each other accountable and leveling each other up, this idea of the rising tide floats the boats. That's really powerful. Definitely, I've been to conferences where it feels almost a bit culty, where you've got the one business coach who's then got the people who are in his mastermind. Everyone in the mastermind is obviously paying lots of money to him, but they can be benefiting from each other, either selling services or giving each other advice from their own areas of expertise and genius. So to have a network like that, obviously there's nothing wrong with assembling a group of people and then charging them for access to that same group of people. So that's definitely powerful.
Mm-hmm. All right, so with that, we're gonna wind down this here episode. So these following questions are for fun. As somebody who used to have long hair for a long time, and I've been called Jesus multiple times, I know what it's like. I did think it was funny. Is like, okay, I wonder if you see a guy with long hair and a beard, he automatically gets a Jesus label. I wonder if he's aware of this. And I go onto the website. Okay, he's not only aware of it, it's on the website. So does that have any impact on what you do or how you see things, or any
massively. So I get called Jesus on pretty much a daily basis now, whether it's van driver coming past and I didn't really lean into it. I had friends saying to me, it's so convincing, you should definitely join a lookalike agency or something like that. There's some way you got to benefit from this. I thought, I'm fine. I've got money, I've got a career, I don't need to get $100 for turning up to a party. But then I was at a conference in Bangkok. I was on a rooftop, and there's this guy I just met who was also into SEO. And he sort of paused, and we've been talking a lot. And he said, "So why don't you go for the SEO Jesus thing?" I thought, fine. I looked at my had to look at the name sheet. SEOjesus.com was available. I thought, well, I can't not go for it. So I grabbed it. I'd never really done anything with that site. It's just a basic landing page. But I got ChatGPT to come up with some terminology. At first, I was enjoying doing that messaging of leave paid ads purgatory, become a disciple, all that kind of messaging. And then the pricing packages of the baptism, the ascension. I didn't go to Sunday school, so I quite quickly ran out of biblical references, went to ChatGPT, and it smashed it. But yeah, I've got enough on. I don't need to build all these like sub brands. But it's quite clear that no matter what I did, I'm still SEO. I just mentioned the story to people in passing, and they go, "Oh my god, that's so good! I'm only going to call you SEO Jesus from now on." I mentioned that in the mastermind I was speaking at, and then I was therefore introduced onto the stage as SEO Jesus. So there's no escaping it. It's become self fulfilling. So just recently, I started moving some of that messaging and pricing packages into my actual brand. So yeah, those are now the pricing packages because yeah, baptism sounds better than 5 links a month, which is what it's previously called.
I also, I'm listening to this and I'm just seeing the light cascading behind you, and I'm like, this is so hard not to
I did notice
talk
that
about.
yeah,
Yeah,
this hotel room it's not the best lighting, but it is on brand.
yeah, exactly. So it's just I find it well, for one, soothing to my soul, in addition to a number of other things. Anyways, so last question for you, and then we'll wrap this up and find out where the audience can reach out to you. Is because for a profession that leans heavily into data-driven decision and results, do you, and if you do, where do you make room for manifestation and just trying to check in with whatever cosmic power you happen to ascribe to?
It's ironic. I've got a spirituality website, and people sort of hesitate and they say, "Oh, I didn't realize you were into that." But it makes sense with the way I look. So I'm really not very spiritual. It's purely a business decision. Search volume in that niche is huge. So you've got angel numbers, tarot cards, plus obviously Gotham metal scene. I've got lots of very spiritual friends. So finding experts to write for me was no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that website now gets 1,000 visitors per day. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm really not that spiritual. In fact, on the contrary, I'm a hypochondriac. At the moment, I'm actually medicated because every couple of years or so, I'll just have a dip where I get very anxious about my health and mortality. And it's basically because I really, truly believe there's only this life, and I want to make the absolute most of it. And I think that's why I've got this entrepreneurial drive and energy, trying to do everything. But yeah, sometimes it backfires. So with that, there is the sense that, yeah, I do need to check in better and not get so carried away. The most recent time, I realized that even when I'm in what I call positive mood, it's still this very high energy, very intense, still quite anxious state. And of course, that's not healthy. I need to work out balance where I'm not massively up or massively down, but just calm, basically. So like I say, I used to want to be a painter and writer. And actually, just recently, I've started painting again for the first time in years, basically. And it is absolute bliss.
Mm-hmm.
Back in January, actually, when I had the last episode with the anxiety, it really struck me that basically I built the business I wanted, but I didn't have the lifestyle that I wanted. I was stuck in rainy London, hadn't planned any travel stupidly. And there's a sense that, the money's coming in now, but what really makes me happy? And so, yeah, basically set out on a project where I've been basically switching my focus instead of optimizing for business and money, optimizing for basically pure enjoyment and satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So one win was definitely bouldering. So I've got into quite a regular habit now of I really value friends. I've got a friend, Shona Beckwith. She's got a massive languages website, perfectenglishgrammar.com. And she came up with this framework of friends, fitness, and flow. And that's her perfect day. I thought, that's so good. I'm stealing that. The important bit being the flow point. That could be a flow state for work, but it could also be a flow state just doing something you enjoy. So with the bouldering, I found I had a really good day if I met up with someone, with a friend. I was going to say someone I can care about. That's called a friend. And meet up for coffee and then go bouldering together. And that was a really good day. They were normally business people because they were available during the day. But that was definitely a good day because I was getting intense exercise and social, and it's kind of strategic as well and keeps your head engaged. But more recently, yeah, painting has just been absolute bliss of really focusing on something for hours and hours and just getting lost and switching off.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. And just you wouldn't know this about me, but I'm a spiritual person, although I have a very specific approach to it. So maybe someday down the line, I'd love to compare notes about our varying perspectives. All right. Well, sorry to say, but that is everything that we've got for today. We are out of time, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this is going to unfold, and looking forward to, among many conversations, at some point getting that spirituality conversation in, because I've talked to some people in the past who've tried to convince me not to believe in what I believe, and so it is always fun to have this like unstoppable force versus immovable object kind of discussions. So I'm looking forward to that.
No, I'm always curious. No, I never look to change anyone's mind.
I mean, it's one of those fun conversations to have, because it's just really just goes to show a person's perspective. But that's definitely not the nature of the show. So that's just my personal intrigue activating. So, Stewart, would you kindly let the audience know where to find you online, and for people who are in the coaching niche, who, we want to talk to these people, so we'd love to have them on the program, maybe how they can reach out as well.
Yeah, I'd always love to say just Google me. I think. I mean, Stewart Vickers is a particularly common name as far as I'm aware, so I think something's gone definitely wrong if I'm in SEO and I'm not ranking for my own name. Ironically, a lot of the coaches or brands I talk to, they'll say, "Yeah, we've done SEO, we rank for our brand name." And yes, you should at least be ranking for your brand name. Those are for the people who are already searching for you. You want to reach out to the people who don't know you exist yet. But yes, I've been doing a lot of work on the personal brand. It's good fun it's called online reputation management, when you try to basically shape that front page of Google for your name. So I've got obviously LinkedIn, Facebook, Crunchbase on there, all of which there's what's called the Google Knowledge Panel, where if you eventually become a person of note, then you get that little pop-up box at the top, which is pretty nice to have. I know a few SEOs where we're all reaching for that. So recently published the best-selling book, The Power Lever Method. So an Amazon author link is often quite a powerful factor in getting that. But yeah, so reach out to me on any platform you can. I recently re-enabled notifications on Instagram, so I do now get Instagram messages. Yep, otherwise just through my website. So if you go to powerlevermethod.com, then you can enter my funnel that way. And most of the funnel is either book a call or simply reply to this email, and happy to give some advice.
Fantastic. And as for me, and again, grateful to have this opportunity and to be able to receive these messages and do my part to help broadcast it to the greater world. But for those of you listening, Joseph Ianni, JOSEPH space IANNI on LinkedIn. That would probably be the best place to reach out to me to confer, and however I might be of assistance to you in that regard. So with that, I always like to come up with a custom sign off for the programs I work in. I don't have one yet, but when we get one, it's going to be really good. So with that said, take care, everybody. We'll be back as soon as we can.